Tomorrow marks 23 years since one of the darkest days in our nation's history. On September 11th, 2001, a terrorist attack took down the World Trade Center and changed the fabric of America forever. Now, more than 2 decades later, the 9/11 Remembrance Foundation of South Carolina is honoring those who lost their lives on that fateful day. Joining me now are 2 board members who've each been personally impacted by the events of that day, Dawn Yamashiro and Chris Bernard. Thank you both so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having us, Jordan.
Thank you so much.
Dawn, I know that you have been with the foundation, as you mentioned, from the very start. Right. So talk about, and you still continue to be a part of it today, talk about your why. What compels you to really spread the message of what happened on 9/11?
Basically, I like to tell the story that I'm a born New Yorker. I was raised in New Jersey, and as soon as I could leave, I did. I came to the USC for school and never went back up north. My brother, on the other hand, loved the snow, and so he decided to stay in New Jersey when he finished high school. And so I was here on 9/11. And the only time I've been to New York for 9/11 is the 1-year anniversary, so we could say goodbye to him. And so we went there and said goodbye, and every other 9/11 I've been here in Columbia, simply because I have children, I have kids who had to go to school, so I couldn't just take off and go to New York every year on 9/11. So whatever the city of Columbia had decided to do, I was going to do it. And I was going to do it because I wanted to remember Brian. And I wanted to bring the message that it didn't just happen to New Yorkers, it happened to everybody. It affected everybody. It may not have been, you know, your family member that you lost, but we all watched it on TV. We watched the towers just crumble. And so I was just trying to bring that message down here that, you know, it matters.
Absolutely.
It matters.
What was it like to, in that moment, you know, see what you were watching on TV and know that you had a very close family member to you up in the north?
I didn't want to believe it. I first listened to it on the radio, and I honestly thought that I was listening to a Christian broadcast radio station saying that something happened in the Middle East, because nothing like that has ever happened here before in my time. And I just couldn't comprehend that the plane, you know, that planes could actually hit buildings in New York City. So when I actually got to a TV to watch and see what was going on, it was just surreal. I said, you know, I couldn't even grasp that my brother worked there. I said, I think he works there. I didn't want it to be true. I just didn't want it to be true.
And your brother, Dawn, and so many others were all lost on that day, but many of their family members, just like you do, continue to share their legacy. I wanted to give you the moment to kind of mention something about your brother that you think many people may not know.
Well, you know, he really enjoyed helping others. A lot of people would say, well, he'd give you the shirt off his back, and that really was the kind of essence of my brother. He really wanted to help folks. He would go ahead and help someone if they had a flat tire on the side of the road. He would go ahead and help you through any kind of problems or issues you were having. He would help you with your computer if it was, he loved computers. Yeah. He also loved cars. So he would absolutely help you with anything car related or computer related. He loved to fix things. And that is something that I see in my own son now as he's going to technical college for automotive services. So I'm very proud that it's running in the bloodlines right there.
Absolutely, that is so beautiful. I'm sure your brother is continuing to live on through your son.
That's right.
Chris, I know you had a bit of a different experience with 9/11. You served in the National Guard. Talk about what it was like, you know, days following 9/11.
Well, I was working full-time as a paramedic during that time, and I was a traditional guardsman at the Air National Guard base at West Hampton Beach. And that morning, I heard on the radio what happened and turned on the television, and I knew that I had to get my uniform on and get to the base and just to help out. So one of my first duties was to make phone calls to the people on the, just to do a recall to see where everybody was in case the Governor Pataki at the time was going to send us into New York City. I remember getting into my car and smelling the smoke. It smelled like the house was on fire next door. And it turned out to be New York City, 70 miles away. So that day we lost firemen, police, and Dawn's brother.
Civilians.
And later I found out that Steven Siller and Timmy and Tommy Haskell were firemen from New York City that I knew. I didn't know until weeks later that we lost them. So it was a very trying time to get as a first responder, knowing that I had to do something.
Yeah, and you played a huge part in those recovery efforts. Talk about some of the emotions you went through being a part of that.
Jordan, my first duty was to evaluate the men and women that were on the front lines for the first couple of days, because they had been through such an experience, and several of them were just not fit to, they were just emotional wreck. You can imagine. It was like a Greek tragedy. These are buildings that I went to as a kid, and I would go to the top and look down, and it was an exciting thing, all those memories, and now it's rubble, smoking, and people were in that rubble. That was a big, I had to do my job, but it affected me, so we had to persevere.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll touch on before we wrap here, as we get further and further away from 9/11, 2001, children don't know about it as much because they weren't alive when it happened. What is something you think that is important for the younger generation to know?
Well, the one thing that I remembered, the couple of things, the takeaway was, we'll never forget. And to tell the story, I've been working with White Knoll High School, their choir. They're involved with the foundation. They come and these students were not alive, like you're saying, and we tell them the story, and then they learn more, and it keeps that memory alive. It keeps them, they want to know what happened and how. They didn't have the experiences that we had, but they still need to know, and it's important because we promised that we wouldn't forget.
Absolutely. And Chris and Dawn and so many others in the community will be at the Morning of Remembrance ceremony tomorrow. It is the 14th annual Morning of Remembrance ceremony, and it will be happening at the Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center on Lincoln Street. It starts at 8 a.m., so if you would like to come, pay your respects to those who lost their lives on that day, as well as our many other officers and anyone in the line of duty who's paid that sacrifice, please do come out to that ceremony. Thank you so much, Dawn and Chris, for sharing your stories with us today.
Thank you so
It's been
much.
our pleasure.
Stick with us. We'll have more Midday coming up after the break.